Okay, I call this meeting to order. Welcome to meeting number 10 of the Standing Committee on Access to Information, Privacy and Ethics. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the House Order of November 25th, 2021, and therefore members are attending in person in the room and remotely using the Zoom application. The committee is meeting today in order to discuss the report of the subcommittee on agenda and procedure, and then to discuss drafting instructions for the draft report on mobility data. And before we do this, I would like to discuss the supplementary estimates C. And what I think, because there's difficulty procedurally with the Zoom application to go in public to in camera, I'm going to do my best to deal with everything that can be dealt with in public first, and then proceed to go in camera for the drafting instructions. So I guess first of all, then to deal with the supplementary estimate pursuant to Standing Order 81-5. The supplementary estimates are deemed referred to a standing committee or committees upon tabling. Each committee may have referred to it in a vote or a series of votes. In our case today, vote 1C under Offices for the Information and Privacy Commissioners of Canada was referred to the committee. Each committee can decide whether it wishes to study the supplementary estimates and report to the House. If the committee opts not to report to the House, the estimates are deemed reported to the House not later than 3 sitting days before the final sitting, or 3 sitting days before the last allotted day in the current supply period. As of now, we still do not know when the last allotted day will be. Therefore, the committees may wish to consider the supplementary estimates and report the votes to the House. They're encouraged to do so as early as possible after they are referred. What I would propose, and I think this is based on discussions that had happened before, is allow the committee to give its input on or give its feedback on the estimates, rather than just allow them to be deemed reported. So we don't have witness and won't have testimony on it, but I'll call the question, I guess, at this point, on whether it is the will of the committee to adopt the supplemental estimates. Please, Mr. Kirk.
Mr. Chair, I would ask that it be proceeded and passed on division.
Okay. All those in favor are agreed? Carried. Passed on division. With that, I will move now on to sorry. Clerk. Is it the will of the committee that the chair report to the House on division? Okay, carried.
Yes.
With that, I'm going to move on to the first report of the Subcommittee on Agenda and Procedure of the Standing Committee on Access to Information, Privacy and Ethics. Your subcommittee met on Monday, February 28th, 2022, to consider the business of the committee and agreed to make the following recommendations. That in relation to its study of the collection and use of mobility data by the Government of Canada, the committee send from the Public Health Agency of Canada, PHAC, and Health Canada, the privacy impact assessment and all documents used to inform the privacy impact assessment developed with regard to PHAC's use of mobility data tracking for COVID-19, and that these documents be received by the committee no later than Friday, March 11th, 2022. Secondly, that in relation to the study of the collection and use of mobility data by the Government of Canada, the committee request Blue Dot Inc. to file the names of its data providers by Friday, March 11th, 2022, and that the analysts attach this information to the report of this study. Third, that in relation to the upcoming study of the use and impact of facial recognition technology, members of the committee submit their lists of suggested witnesses to the clerk no later than Thursday, March 10th, 2022. Fourth, that the meetings of Monday, March 21st and Thursday, March 24th, 2022 be dedicated to the study of the use and impact of facial recognition technology. And fifth, that the meetings of Monday, March 28th and Thursday, March 31st, 2022 be dedicated to the consideration of a draft report on the collection and use of mobility data by the Government of Canada. That is the report of the subcommittee and its recommendation to this committee. And so I will ask for a motion to approve that report. Okay, Ms. Khalid moved. All those in, I'll ask it in reverse again since this is a hybrid sitting. Are there any opposed to adoption of the report? The report is carried. So those were the main two items that I wanted to take care of before we moved in camera, but I did want to make sure that members, we had a couple of motions that are floating around, and if there is other committee business that anyone wants to entertain in public or something before we go in camera, now is the time. I see Mr. Couric got his hand up. Go ahead, Mr. Couric, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I won't take more than but a minute. I certainly hear often from constituents and many Canadians that are curious about the status of what happened with the previous study called Questions of Conflict of Interest and Lobbying in Relation to Pandemic Spending, more often referred to as the We Charity situation. And as a member of this committee during the first part of the last Parliament, certainly I hear many of these questions. So today, Mr. Chair, I would like to give notice of the following motion. That pursuant to Standing Order 108 3H, the committee undertake a study into issues of conflict of interest and the Lobbying Act in relation to pandemic spending, provided that A, the evidence and documentation received by the committee during both sessions of the 43rd Parliament on the subject be taken into consideration by the committee in the current session. B, the committee adopt the report entitled, quote, Questions of Conflict of Interest and Lobbying in Relation to Pandemic Spending, unquote, originally adopted as the committee's second report in the second session of the 43rd Parliament. C, dissenting or supplementary opinions be submitted electronically in both official languages to the clerk of the committee within 48 hours of the adoption of this motion. And D, the chair table this report in the House on or before March 31st, 2020. Mr. Chair, I'm aware of the important business that this committee has to discuss today, so I'm not looking to debate this today, but rather simply give notice of motion so that it can be dealt with, hopefully expediently, in a future meeting. And I would further note, Mr. Chair, that an electronic version will be sent to the chair post-haste. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you for the notice of motion. If there's no other business, then, okay, I see Monsieur Villemure has his hand up. Go ahead, Monsieur Villemure. And give me one moment. I'm sorry, I didn't test and get my audio organized. I want to make sure that I catch this. So
you're all forgiven.
Go ahead.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Chair, I would also like to table a notice of motion so that pursuant to Standing Order 108.3H, the committee undertake a study concerning the prevention of the capture and use of Canadians' personal data and information for malicious purposes by foreign powers and corporations, that the committee invite the Privacy Commissioner, experts and researchers, particularly in the field of cybersecurity, and representatives of police forces and national security services, that the committee hold a minimum of 6 meetings, and that the committee report its findings and recommendations to the House. The notice of motion was sent earlier this week.
Thank you for giving us notice of that motion. Any other items or business before I adjourn or suspend the meeting to go in camera? Okay, meeting suspended.